Hi, I'm Micah.
Hey, I'm Christa.
Welcome to Bad People. A podcast that seeks to create a safe place to wrestle with life's deeply personal questions. Our aim is to be honest with ourselves first and foremost, to confess where necessary and throw stones at our own glass houses, examining experiences with curiosity and vulnerability. These conversations are not an attempt to provide answers or offer simple platitudes. Rather, our goal is to hold open-ended dialogue around what simply is and do so from a level playing field, without fear of judgment or shame. Join Christa and I at your own risk as we excavate the ways belief, community, trauma, and relationship has impacted who we both are today.
Thanks, Micah.
Yes.
We've been over the last couple of weeks. It's funny because we kind of put a framework together around what this season would look like. And it's been kind of fun for us to interact with that because we've seen a progression that has been somewhat like we didn't really see that it would be like the way that it's happened in our own lives. And so even in the last few weeks of the different topics, it's been kind of fun to go, oh yeah, that's exactly like what happened.
How it happened.
Yeah.
The progression of things.
Yeah. And I think the big one going like, again, just to review, like us kind of feeling in our body like, oh, we're not okay. And then, trying to go, okay, what does that then mean? And us thinking like, oh, can we even like think different types of thoughts and go and okay, just because the Bible says this one thing, can we have like an opposite thought? Or because our friends are all saying one thing, does that still resonate for ourselves? And then questioning, and kind of going, okay, are these things, really the question of like good or bad, hero, villain, or just going like, well, these things are, and this is what's true. And then how do we kind of hold that without, just intention, I guess?
Yeah.
And then, kind of going as we were sort of voicing those things or still interacting in the same way that we used to, going like, oh, wait, there's some exploitation going on. Like, where maybe we're saying we're not okay, but it's like, no, push through it. Like, keep going. Like, just deny yourself, deny your experience. And, well, the Bible says this, or you should pray more, or whatever else. And going, well, that wasn't helpful.
Yeah. And the autonomy, like realizing our agency in our own lives.
Yeah.
We actually have the choice and to choose what we believe.
Yeah.
To choose how we carry ourselves. And
and first to choose to have our own thoughts. Like, I think that was
what do I think and feel?
And
is that valid?
Which is like a funny, I think both of us probably had those moments where it's like, wait, I actually have the right to think my own thoughts. And what do I even think in these moments? And I know for me, it was really hard to even find the space to go like, or actually it was funny to even say things like, I don't even know what I believe. Like, I don't even know how I feel about this because I've always put other people's thoughts and opinions and what the Bible says and preacher says like kind of above my own experience. And for once in my life going like, no, I have to, something is really wrong. I mean, again, my actions like showed me that something was really wrong in my life, in my acting out, I guess. And that was my moment. And for you, it was like, well, your body was just shutting down.
Which I think that's a good point that you bring up of like, I know something's wrong, but I don't even know what I think or feel. And I think that's the work that it actually takes to like understand what you think and feel. Like that takes time and space and encouragement sometimes from people. Because I think if even those closest to you continue to kind of deny that, like you'll say little things, like you'll be like, I'm not okay, or I don't know if I can keep doing this or whatever else. And then when that's like, no, like you're fine, like it's fine, or these are the reasons why you really are okay, because that does or that did happen to me a lot. And then I'm like, sure, you're right, you know best thing. And then when your body, like for me, like literally it was like, actually no more, not bad. And then it was like, well, you're without kind of proper thought about consequence. I think I just went through the motions of like, well, no, this is what feels the best. And and of course I wish, like looking back on that, I would have made a different choice, just a different
doing the right thing for me would have been like putting in some boundaries, not interacting with someone else who is married, not also like going against like the promises that I had made, like actually like, again, if I had divorced first or whatever, like, I still would have been going back on promises. But I think, I don't know. There's just a lot of wrestling through kind of what would have been the right way, but I definitely know actions for me just allowed for, I guess, the truth of how I really was feeling to be, sort of shown and exposed.
Yeah. And it's not like we're all sort of like, logical beings every moment of it. Like, we're not always thinking through things. We don't have the time or the space. Often we're just doing.
Yeah.
And, like, that's where you've got to consider all these aspects. Because, like, for us, I mean, like, sometimes you're just in survival mode without you even realizing it. Like,
which, again, is so tricky when we need to be connected to ourselves. Like, and I think that is such a tension that we've touched on a few times, like, in the system of how church operates sometimes. Or religion operates, is like there is a disconnect from your actual needs and wants, or how you actually feel, and it kind of goes under the umbrella of like denial of self, and that's selfish, and you think too highly of what you think or whatever, or pride. But it's like, no,
pride is a big one.
But no, like, just because I'm saying something doesn't feel right for me doesn't necessarily mean that I'm saying, like, that's what this podcast is. Again, like, we're not saying we have the answers. We're just addressing what we've found to be true in our own lives.
For sure. And I think that's where it can be really hard to think, like, the connection between, say, take the Bible and preaching and like interpreting the Bible, for instance, like in a religious, like in a Christian setting in a church, you're kind of sort of always being told how to think about the Bible. And so it's just crazy how that can spread to every area of life where you are dependent on someone else to tell you how to think everywhere in your life.
Very personal thing. Totally. Like, I lament the whole, LGBTQ plus, like, that experience, right? Where those are very personal things. Like, I remember being a kid and going like, wow, somebody being told to go without love their whole life because they don't fit within like the quote unquote like biblical standard. And it's like, oh geez, like, that's a huge ask. And you're going to ask that of somebody where you've never walked in their shoes, right? You don't know what it's like to be same-sex attracted. And you're going to say to them, well, you have to go without. Like, at least I can hear from preachers that maybe have been same-sex attracted, but yet, man, sometimes the humanity just gets left out there, and you're like, oh shoot, we're blanket statement saying like, well, we see that the Bible says this and about this topic, which actually is like, it's like this much in the whole Bible. And even that maybe is misinterpreted, right? And for sure, all of a sudden there's denial of one's actual experience and actual need for love and connection. And we're just blanket statement going like, well, no, this is what me, like, male pastor on the platform is saying about
my stance.
Exactly. Without, again, experience and true, like, kind of like that longing for wholeness. Like, like there's,
I think just like understanding, that's why I think like having discussion and discourse around the Bible is so important. But it's interesting in that setting where like you come in and you sit and someone preaches and there's no back and forth. Like, that's just an interesting concept to me now, where like actual like Hebrew and Jewish interaction with scripture was not like, they would have someone reading a passage. But then the rest of that was like discourse and like, okay, so what is this? How do we? And that's what is so ludicrous to me now, is like, if we're going to have projections and opinions about how people in this category of life should live, don't you want to like hear from someone who is in that spot? And like, how does it feel to be them, and to like, what is it? Like, we need this diversity of like experience and safety for people to share said experience. Because I thought it was interesting. I mean, I was reflecting on this week, was you can be honest about how you feel about something
I believe, only in places where somebody can receive like what you're saying. Like if it's for sure defensive, or if you get shut down or shamed or whatever else, all of a sudden your truth just has to shift a little. Otherwise, like it's like you're literally vulnerable. Like you're literally like putting your guard down and going, this is how I truly am.
Yeah.
Like, and if somebody's ready to like weaponize scripture, or even like kind of go like attack you with like, well, you shouldn't be like that, or don't you know, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that, of course, you're not going to tell it how it really is.
Yeah.
Because you're not,
if you understand to do that.
So like these are things that are very close to ourselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's sad. And I mean, yeah, of course you should be brave enough to withstand that. But no, like, let's be real. That's too much.
Yeah. I think that's like, when people we often like listen with our own biases there. So if you're kind of like, well, this is my stance and I'm going to sort of filter everything through that, you can't actually really hear people that's why I think there's a lot to like actually like, what does it mean to like listen to someone, really listen without being but that's something for me as well, where I'm like, well, I'm not an unbiased person. Like I know I've got biases. I know my biases are always being informed by like what I'm listening to and who I'm interacting with. But I think knowing I have biases and like being able to identify, okay, like right now my bias would lay with like progressive Christianity, and like there's a lot of truth, and it makes a lot of sense to me that this vein of Christianity and what these people are trying to do. But I have to be aware of that too, and I'm like speaking to people who are maybe not in that, like I don't know, just, and I'm also like probably have a bias toward like women and being like feminist views, because that just resonates with me as well. But I have got to be careful not to let that become like a man-hating thing.
Totally. Well,
because that's not the case. Like, so just realizing the biases and like where these things are actually helpful and where there's truth to them.
Totally.
And like, but it can be hard to like listen. And if you're being vulnerable with someone like that, who's kind of like all they're really giving you back is their projected views. It's funny. It can be hard.
Today well, I kind of glazed over what the actual topic was.
Sorry.
Okay. No. We are really excited, I think, to some of these conversations, because obviously this is something that we find a lot of life in discussing these things. But our topic today is around boundaries. And sort of going like, okay, so we feel that we're not okay. We start to think of our own thoughts, and then start to go like, oh, we've seen that we have been exploited. Like when we start to say this is an issue. Sorry, I have to sneeze.
Bless you.
Thank you. Nope, we're good. And then, sort of like, oh, we're not safe to kind of go like, oh, I'm not okay and I need to disengage. And no, we keep kind of getting kind of put back in the system that we're maybe not feeling okay with. And then now today kind of going, okay, how do we even say no and go like, okay, no, I'm not okay. And I actually can't exist and participate in these systems or with people in the same way anymore until I figure out how I feel and how to make myself feel baseline okay. And so, today we'll talk about that. And I mean, saying no. Say no. And especially like when you're because I thought it was interesting as I was trying to still interact with a system or with people that, I just didn't feel like I could be fully myself with. Like, I, again, keep getting triggered because it's just like, oh no, like you don't understand. And I need to keep trying to explain why I need this boundary. And then seeing myself, show up in ways that I'm like, oh no, that's not who I am. Like literally yelling at my poor friends. I have one friend I've yelled at a few times now and being like, what, the Bible study is not what we need. And she loves Bible study. And I'm like, wow, I'm becoming something that I don't want to become. I really need to disengage and stop trying to like be in both camps. And just to go, no. I need to go over here.
Do what you need to do. Yeah.
Have a boundary. And it's not about, trying to convince anyone else. And that's like, again, in that old way of thinking, like, I have to justify why I need this boundary.
Yeah.
It needs to be a biblical justification, or some mentor needs to affirm me, or I don't know, I need to have heard from God or something. And it's, no, I just need to go over here because I'm not showing up the way that I know and how I want to be. Or who I know that I am down inside.
Yeah.
So,
I think it can be hard when you are in a place of like, okay, now this is where I need to say no, or this is where I need to like separate myself. And then, but then you're still exposed to, like things that will trigger you. Because I think that's a hard place to be. Like, I had to set some pretty like solid, hard boundaries with my mom at one time in my life, and also I was going in through therapy, and so we were unpacking a lot of like things in my family that were maybe not so healthy, or that were just complicated. And so then I would go home and visit, and all I could, like, everywhere I could see all the things like I was working through. And so everything was a major trigger. And I think that's where it's hard, because then, I would want to speak up about it, and I would want to, and that's, I think, okay to be like, that's okay too, that response of like, no, this is triggering me, and I can't just be quiet in the face of it. Like, but then, I did, like, if people are not ready to engage, and if that kind of triggered place means you're debating and discussing with someone in a like very highly emotional state, it's not often productive
or healthy for either person. Right? Like, there again isn't that safety of like, no, we have like a common goal, and it's like of health and rest or whatever. I don't know what that is.
Or just like, I don't know, respect, love someone or respect them. Like,
and if you have to be right, like either party, there has to be change. Like, I think it's interesting now to kind of go like, okay, I've now removed myself from a few different situations, and kind of going, I think this removal has allowed me to go, okay, these people or systems or places can exist the way they are, and they, like, I can't change them.
Totally.
If I respect them enough, like, I'm like, you don't need to change. Like, you are functioning and surviving the way
that's working for you.
Then I need to remove myself, because me interacting with you actually causes something weird to happen inside myself. So my own family history or my own struggles, then it's okay for me to be over here. And I don't have to convince them that they need to change, but I also can't participate anymore.
Totally.
So then that also just needs to be okay.
That's where, boundaries come in.
Totally.
I think as well, it's hard when you've been hurt by other people's behavior. Then you are connected to them in a way where it's hard to, like, it takes a lot of, it's hard to put boundaries in place. And you do want to, when you've been hurt, like, you don't want that to keep happening.
No.
You don't want that to happen to other people. So it is our natural response to be like, you need to change, or, well, this needs to change, and this is not right.
It's hurting me, or whatever. And maybe it's hurting them too, and you think that they can't see, or whatever else. But again, if something's not changing, and you've tried and tried and tried, and it's okay to just go, okay, that's what it is. They're neither good or bad because of what's going on. Same with me. Like, I'm over here, and I can just exist. And I mean, I like to just go, well, I'm bad, because it's just easier than trying to say that what I'm doing is either good or bad.
Totally.
Or just, let's just go with it. But it's just what needs.
I'm good with being bad right now.
Exactly. Because it's just, again, that freedom for me to go. Like, I'm not trying to convince anybody. I'm not trying to say that my way is better. This is just what I need.
I need to prioritize myself.
Exactly.
And that's, I think, what the boundaries help us do. But it can be hard to get to that place of like, what is the boundary?
Totally.
And
and I mean, I've tried to look at it from a biblical place, because that used to be my standard of living, you know, like, where, I do see a bunch of examples in scripture, or even how I understood God's character to be, that he would yes, he would be okay with me being over here and choosing to separate and get divorced and choosing to not go to church every Sunday.
Yeah.
The ways that I used to live my life. Like, I believe that God is with me over here in that. But yet there's something to that. Like, by me saying that, somehow I think people go like, but you're wrong. Like, and they need to convince me that, no, that's not what God wants for you. And I'm like, okay, I used to be in that camp, so I totally get it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, then don't worry about like the God justification. Just let me be over here and be bad, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But then, like, as I'm over here, like, how do you, again, go forward and not kind of repeat the same patterns all over again and go like, right, boundaries look like this. And again, not to bring in the Bible again, but it is just like the frame of which we did life for so long, or the lens we looked through.
Yeah.
But the two greatest commandments are like, love God and then love others the way you love yourself. Like, that is supposed to be like the number one thing, more than the 10 commandments, more than like the whole Bible, all like the story, whether we think it's descriptive or prescriptive or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's the one Jesus chose to highlight.
Yeah.
And he was asked, like, if you could sum up.
Yeah, the whole thing. And so going like, I love today as we're talking like, right, love others as you love yourself. But we always go, it's always about others. And that's how I did my whole life.
We love others first and then ourselves last.
Absolutely like
doesn't work that way.
No, because it's like love others as you love yourself. Yeah. Going like, you should love yourself first.
Yeah. So, but the love yourself is a tricky one, because I think that comes with a lot of like grayness of like, well, where does selfishness come in? And like, is loving yourself in a sense can feel selfish? And the way that we've been taught selfishness works is like
totally
focusing on yourself, prioritizing yourself.
Yeah.
And I think there's also a lot of like distrust of people who want to separate from like the group.
Yes.
Because it's like, oh no, you're going to be isolated and then you're going to like slip into whatever thinking that's like, but actually Christianity has like, we in the traditions of it, like historically, we have all these different sects. Like there were the hermits and the saints who would like go and live their entire life on their own, like in the desert.
Yes.
And I think we've swung the opposite way, where we're like, any kind of like isolation or being on your own is dangerous.
Yes.
But actually, that's one of the only ways you know how to like get in touch with yourself, is if you cut out all the noise around you and you can be on your own by yourself and just like listen to your thoughts. And like spending time alone, I think, is something we all need. And at times, periods of like, I don't know, isolation for me, not isolation, but just like withdrawing from things has been how I actually like can think.
And we can see things clearly.
Yeah. Right. And like, sorry.
No. It's just funny because we, again, before we press record, we were kind of talking about church and how, again, like you're supposed to go every Sunday because that's how you engage with like the body of believers, and it's how you hear the word of God, and it's how you worship. And then being in like the production side of church for both of us and going like, like there's so many good things that go on a Sunday service. And then there's also the like, we were kind of joking a little bit about like a holy chord progression, or, you know, like how you can put together a service so that things are marketed in a certain way.
Or we're generating certain kind of feelings and manufacturing the atmosphere a bit. In a way.
And then again, our access to God being like, well, if you come every Sunday, then you can be sure that you're staying close to God's word and to the Holy Spirit. And we're praying corporately. So that's another way to access God. And again, there's a lot of manufacturing and programming and production that goes into a Sunday service. And then to go, it's okay also to then retreat and go into the forest and go, well, actually, this is also a really great place where worship can just be enjoying creation.
Stillness.
Exactly. And or if you bring your family out there to laugh together and to
be in the sunshine.
Exactly. Like all of those incredible blessings, quote unquote, from God,
Yeah.
like, but yeah, that's like, again, somewhat of an unpopular opinion because there's lack of control, or again, like, how do we keep the program and the system running if people aren't participating in it every week?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just being super like cutthroat and very black and white about that. But it is tricky when we're told every Sunday, and then Wednesday community group, and then like, well, are you serving somewhere else? And don't forget to minister to like everyone through your week.
Yeah.
It is a lot to do.
Yeah.
It has very little to do with a connection to personal self and going like,
can very easily just become doing.
Yeah. Not like, am I okay? Like, how are my internal thoughts? Like, how am I interacting with my spouse and my children?
Yeah.
Is it all just like, nope, we got to do this militant thing?
Yeah.
Or we got to show up and that's going to make us holy? Or, it's just, right, again, taking those steps back. And that, like you said, the isolation can bring clarity.
Yeah. But also, I think boundaries, like when it comes to, I mean, this is interesting ground to get into. But I mean, for me, I feel like boundaries definitely applied when it came to church.
Yeah.
Putting boundaries in place, because like that's the same thing. Once you kind of realize, actually, I have a choice, and actually, like, this is kind of unhealthy, like this amount of time being spent. And then the choice is to have a boundary and be like, no, I'm actually not going to be involved every single minute of, my free time.
Yeah.
That was, I think a weird boundary to have, because in a sense, like, if that's the norm in your community, then to like always be there, then you can sort of feel like a bad person for saying no. But also what you were saying with like the emotional kind of manipulation aspect of creating, like, I think that's what's hard in a church setting, is where we do all these practices, and then the language given to that is like, oh, what you're experiencing right now is the presence of God. And so if you're kind of conditioned to think that, then if the presence of God is represented to you by like a certain worship song or doing your devotions, or it kind of like keeps you coming, right? Like to do those things and to get that intimacy, because we're all taught that, like, that's the goal, to have intimacy with God, and that's what makes you good, and that's what makes you righteous. Like,
but it's funny because each one of those things requires like either a book in front of you or a notepad or a sermon being ingested or something. Instead of like, again, I don't think it's heretical to say we can just exist ourselves with God. And like that, there's nothing that blocks that. Like, that's what we believe Jesus did for us, is our access to God doesn't need to go through anyone else, or we don't need to totally think in order to have access to God.
Which that theology is taught as well. But then there is this kind of like, ooh, don't go and like off on your own.
But it's funny because like Jesus literally like says, like, kind of to religion or religious people, like, you keep adding like these, I think it's like a stone. It's been a while. Anyways,
I know the one you mean though, like
adding like like weight and pressure and like burden to people.
It's a burden.
Instead of like, again, if we believe that Jesus came in the way that he did, he came to like free us from that stuff.
Totally.
Like, again, just love God, love others the way you love yourself. Like simple. And again, it's not about the right theology or whatever else. I think it's interesting because I saw that play out in the relationships that I had that were closest to me that I've had to distance myself from, was just that, again, there were like these things that I'd have to do, or the denial of how I really felt or how I could show up as fully myself in those relationships and be either like an equal or have my voice totally heard. those were like supported, like the lessening of myself is actually backed by like church kind of like ideal.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh yeah, I saw that play out in these relationships that I also had to go, well, everyone keeps saying like these are biblical, good, healthy relationships, but I don't feel okay here. And I don't feel like I can be fully myself and fully love myself and love you at the same time.
Yeah. And then it kind of becomes from that place of like obligation anyway, which is not good for anyone in the congregation. Like people will feel that too. Like they feel that your time is from given kind of because you're acting out of obligation.
Totally.
Rather than like, I'm genuinely interested in you as a person.
And it's not real and it's not lasting.
Right.
If we think about things that are authentic and true, they are actually real to their core. It's not out of obligation or obedience.
They're chosen.
Love. Yeah. It's just like, again, a choice.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, this is good. I want to participate and interact with this. It feels like I can be whole a little bit or whatever else. And yes, like I think it's funny that you said today, talking about your anxiety, you want to talk about wholeness and your anxiety, how you said like,
oh yeah, like because when I first was experiencing that unavoidable anxiety where it was like I couldn't cope and having a panic attack and just needing Grant's like support to get through the day. I was fearful like every minute, kind of fearing. And just like, that's not who I feel like I am. But I was just like, anything to get this away. Like Christians shouldn't struggle with anxiety. I don't want this. I don't need this. What do I need to do to kind of like get rid of it?
Yeah. I just heard this preacher saying like, shed the things, like shed your anxiety. Okay.
Like it's something that comes along and conflicts with your idea of who you should be.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, well, that's not what's happening right now. Like, and so what do I do about that? And I think one of the first responses is to be like, try to like run away from it.
Yeah.
Or outrun it or like push it away but then I was in therapy and my therapist was just trying to kind of like coach me through dealing with anxiety. And she was kind of like, you sort of have to make friends with it in a way and just like recognize that it's there and that it's probably going to be there for a while.
Yeah.
But and so after kind of like, what is it now? It's almost 4 years on kind of from that moment. And that's what the past 4 years I feel like has been me learning to like be okay with it, which it has also included like taking meds, which helps. But even that is something that has for me been a part of like becoming friends with it. Is like, it's kind of here and I'm getting to know like my triggers and that it can sometimes just hit me out of nowhere. But like, I also feel right now the most whole I've ever felt. And
that's so fast.
I have so there would have been a time in my life where, having anxiety would have been like almost like a mark against my like your Christian status.
Like when you think about like that thing you were told to aspire to, I remember in like one of our first conversations was like, yes, being like the ultimate Christian, right? Like as a child,
super Christian.
That's what my aim is. And then like, but with that comes like, well, it doesn't look like any of these things.
Yeah.
And then now going like, okay, right, the super Christian is like a thing of the past.
Yeah.
And I do have anxiety, and that doesn't mean I'm good, bad, or what, or haven't brought this on myself. And, and again, by like going like, this is what is, I have anxiety, I'm gonna like hold its hand and be friends with it.
Yeah.
Finding like, I think a peace and how to interact with who you truly are.
Totally.
This happens to be an element of that right now.
Yeah. And in some ways I've liked it because it has made me entertain the question instead of like trying to just
squash them down.
Yeah. And probably because they're like there, like when you've got anxiety, like you're not always logical and those spiraling thoughts that is like a very hard side of anxiety that you've got to like work with. But
then you actually have to do like you have to like talk yourself out of those moments or whatever. Right?
Or even just entertain them, because I think like trying to not think about them would make it worse.
Yeah.
So like actually it made me realize I need to like face a lot of the fears that I were coming up for me with anxiety, and facing them was like the only way to actually sort of like move on from them, and then realize, oh, like, yeah, this is an unnecessary fear, or I can actually overcome this fear.
Right.
Like, and now it's not such a fear for me anymore. But I think,
But maybe the boundary did you have to put in place in order to get there and have the space to kind of like, oh no, I'm going to interact with this and have like the time to do so. I'm sure you had to like say no to other things in your life, right? In order to
for sure.
Yeah. I would go, this is present. I have to engage with this.
Yeah.
What do I have to say no to so that I can do that?
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing is like it can completely like debilitate you. Like I didn't even have some day, like when it was the worst, I felt like I just getting through the day with my son, like was overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like
you're like, I can do this.
Looking after a child while being like riddled with fear and like, you just have to keep going in a way.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like all I could, in a way, like my entire mind was just like, that's another thing I hated about it was that I was only thinking about myself.
Right.
Because it's just all in your mind. And so
maybe a lifetime you hadn't.
Right.
You're just finally catching, like it does serve a purpose. Like,
right.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But it's interesting that it all comes out in like fear. Yeah. The worst fears and but yeah, absolutely. Like I had to, Grant was kind of the only person I could tolerate seeing because he knew and he was my support,
and he's been a safe
for sure.
Again, that doesn't always happen, right?
No,
we want to believe that our partners can be that safe place for us, but depending on what they have going on in their life, and it doesn't mean you have a good or bad marriage if they're not. It's just possibly a reality, right? So
for sure. And I was lucky because he worked from home and he was like actually on our property in his workshop. So like, thank God, because he went when I was having like bad panic attacks, he could just kind of come in and be with me. But and then my sister was the only, because she lived with us, was the only other person I was kind of like, and then it was like the doctor.
Right.
Like, literally it's like your world. There's no way. And going to church was definitely not something that was going to help me.
Yeah, especially like the mega church.
No,
like nothing again. Like, oh man, like you think of that mega church in particular, like great things have come out of there, right?
Yeah,
like so many good things. But for somebody that is is going through this insane anxiety, like, and trying to even figure out like what to do to get better, it's not going to be helpful for you. Yeah.
And for me, a lot of my anxiety was related to church too, and spiritual things like my faith. So I think that's where it was tricky. But I think that's what I also wanted to say around like church and boundaries, because when I realized a lot of the theology too, that I was like, oh, that's that's kind of toxic, or that's using the Bible in an irresponsible way, or that's weaponizing this against certain people. Like, their spiritual trauma is a thing.
Yep.
And this is another thing that I could go on for days about, and I can, there's a lot of podcasts that have helped me with that, but it's a hard thing because it's kind of intangible. It's like to do with your intellect and mind, and like but it does have physical ramifications in your body. Like trauma does that.
Yeah.
And I think the hard part with church is like if you have found yourself in an environment where you're suddenly like, why I'm not okay, like, and this is making me feel very uncomfortable. Then like to be able to take some distance from church. And like for me, I couldn't attend church for like I tried even, but
you have tried a lot.
The triggers were visceral, and like I am in a place now where I can attend church. And without being like physically sort of triggered. Now it's more just kind of like intellectual triggers, I guess, with like theology, where it's not actually like manifesting in my body. But there was a time where it was, and I now understand that's because of spiritual trauma. And so like taking the distance from church. But having also my husband like understand that, I think was, even if he didn't understand, supported me not going.
Right.
And being like, yeah, let's just not go if that's the impact it's having on you. So we did take a break for a while, like a couple years of not going to church.
Yeah.
Or reading my Bible. Or worship music.
Yeah.
Everything was triggering.
Yeah. Which again, I think we both believe our access and our value to God or his value to us or whatever. I think we're at a place where that does not need to be by opening your Bible or by going to church or and
these
maybe
formulas that
exactly maybe that's just something that we hold, but I think we can both see evidence that that is who Jesus like or why he came to this world. If we believe the gospel or whatever, that we can just exist as we are, as flawed as we are, and know that we're okay and possibly loved and but we're baseline, like it's fine to just be in this moment. Like,
totally.
I think it's interesting that you say that you had support from Grant.
Yeah.
Because that makes me think about the recent experiences and going like, oh, right, I had to, make some really, again, unpopular choices in the church. Like I have like some pretty significant boundaries in place with certain people. And obviously chose to separate and then, which is now we're in the process of finalizing our divorce. Yeah. Which again, like biblically, a lot of the people in or the way that people understand the Bible in my current context is that that's not a God-ordained sort of choice to be made. Although, I mean, thankfully, there are many other opinions out there that would say that there is, biblical reason for divorce. Yeah. Anyways, all that to say, was that I came to a place where, not all of my choices were supported by the people that I would have gone to for advice, that I held their opinions like most high. And through differing moments that, sometimes there would be support and then there's questions. And I'm like, oh crap, I actually have to move forward in a way that I believe where, no, I need to feel okay. Like I need to feel like I can fully show up as exactly who I am. Yeah. Because I think for years, like there's been escapism in my life, like thankfully not through like drug addiction or other things that can look really appealing or just obviously serve a purpose for people that find themselves like with addiction issues. Yeah. But just like other things like either shopping or just like disassociation or like, choosing food. Like I would medicate a lot with like overeating, which again, none of these things ever got like too crazy. Yeah. I mean, shopping, I could probably say would have. Yeah. But like coping for years and then going, wait, that's not healthy. Yeah. I keep trying to say like, I'm not okay. Yeah. I can't seem to be okay, like baseline okay. So I have to remove myself. I have to trust that I do know what's best for me. Yeah. And that I didn't want to keep showing up and feeling like I wanted to have like an affair. Like that was a serious issue for me, going like, I don't know if I can ever escape these feelings. And I don't know that if I squash this one thing, it'll just like come up again. Like there's something wrong in my life. Like I know it's different for other people why they've chosen to have affairs. A lot of people end up with their affair partners and whatnot. Yeah. So everybody's situation is different. Yeah. For me, I knew that that's not a way that I wanted to go forward in life. Yeah. Like risking that would be something that I'd want to choose to do again. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, that's important to me. And feeling like I can hear my own thoughts was important to me. Yeah. And safe was super important to me. Yeah. Feeling respected and like worthy and like I had worth. Like, and when I kept showing up in the places that I used to exist, those things were all not present. Like, I could keep saying like, no, I do love myself and I do have value and I do have worth. But what was being reflected back was not what was like, it wasn't showing up in that way. I was like, well, no, I keep saying I have these things, but what you're kind of reflecting back is that you don't believe that. So like, like I believe this is important to me. Yeah. So and then choosing to remove myself. Oh my gosh, like divorce is not for the faint of heart. Like it's terrible. Like unless it's not working out, like you are literally splitting like two souls apart. Like you do become one, I think, when you're as intertwined as we were, like that sucks. And then like losing community and family, like not fun.
Yeah.
But
not something you would kind of wish on anyone.
No.
Lightly go ahead and do. Yeah.
And then again, like it was almost an exercise in going, Christa, like, will you believe that what you're feeling is actually like worthy enough, true enough to take these actions?
Yeah.
And I think I said before that just going like, no, I do know what's right for me. And I am going to trust that this is like the only way forward is to kind of like, you do have to do the really hard thing and go, that's how you're going to learn a new pathway in your mind to totally what I know to be true is worth it enough to make these decisions.
Totally.
It sucks because I had 4 kids that I'm also like leading along. So I didn't do it flippantly. And it took me many, many years to get to this point. I think I was so afraid that maybe I was all wrong and had it all, that I was really the problem. Which again, I can still maybe say that, sure, I'm definitely part of the problem. Maybe I'm the whole problem. That's fine. But
I think anyone who's been in a marriage knows that. It's a 2-person thing.
I think you know what? Totally. But I mean, it's difficult when you're like, again, the villain or the one that's acted out or whatever.
For sure.
Yeah. And again, I'm fine to kind of go like, that's fine. But me, villain, bad person over here, just again, baseline trying to feel okay. Even if nobody else affirmed that, even if my partner or, I mean, my best friends have been great. My mentor has been good, but it's like, they also were like, I don't know, this is very different than what we would choose for you. And I still went ahead with it. And I feel now like, again, able to, like it can be very lonely. And there isn't that person that's like constantly reassuring me, but that's okay because I am in tune more with like, again, like being separated or divorced and, you know, kind of going, no, I actually don't have relationships with these people that were so close to me before. I feel the most whole now. And it's funny that you kind of say the same, like going, okay, the boundaries that I've put in place to interact with how I truly am is the place that I need to exist going forward. From there, kind of build whatever life upon that. So I think, just interesting experiences. And for people that don't feel like they have family or support and stuff, like it's still, I don't know, it can be a hard road. Exactly. Hard road, but still worth it. There's still life on the other end. Right? And
that was like for me, belief-wise, because it was very scary to be like, wait, I don't think I believe this.
What does that mean? Can I go forward and go into the unknown?
And have
so scary
risk, you know, the like backlash you'll get from that of like, it's just unknown, and the risk is, potentially like losing friends or community.
People that you're like, no, I still like love you.
This is just a belief thing.
Yeah.
That's where it's tricky in the Christian world, because beliefs kind of like are at the center of everything.
Yeah.
So it can be so strange to, I think, people not in that context where you're like, but why would you just say you don't believe that anymore? Like change an entire relationship. And it's like, yeah, why? But it does.
It does.
And
maybe there's space to like know somebody in a better and more real way. Like, I mean, Heidi's been incredible to go, like, I'm getting to know you. Like, it's been bumpy. Like, sometimes like, I don't know who you are. But at the same time, she's confident enough in the long-lasting relationship that we have had to go, like, I'm willing to meet you and to really learn who you truly
That's beautiful.
are. Yeah,
beautiful.
Such a huge thing. And it's, again, been bumpy, but man, to see a healthy relationship go like, okay, we've had our ups and downs, but baseline, there's like some mutual respect, value attached to like who she truly is, and who I truly am.
And I think
that's the life forward, right?
Totally. And that's a good reflection of, I think, like you and I would probably, I wasn't able to take my paths and make my decisions without also like support from my husband. And because I think, I mean, like I still would have been down this path, but I think if he had not accepted me for it or been like stuck I don't know.
Some marriages dissolve.
For sure. This can be,
right?
Changing beliefs can definitely be a cause for split. And I mean, that probably has happened in some of our communities' lives for sure.
Yeah.
Like where two different views were taken. And, but I think that's an example of like true respect for someone is also like things are not static and like you changed. And change is good, and change should be embraced.
Yeah.
But it can be so, like, especially when, someone you've known in a certain context for so long is then all of a sudden different. But to have that still be, like, to have space made for that still and to be still respected, like, as a person.
Totally.
I think that is what actually, like, you need that when you're setting boundaries. Like, you do need, so...
And sometimes,
I think, sorry. No, I was just going to say, I think, like, you do need community in that sense where, like, it's impossible to kind of do these things because they're hard without, like, at least one support person. You only need one person.
I thought it was interesting because I got to a place where I'm like, if nobody supports me, I still have to go forward. And
interesting.
Feeling like still very alone, which is those moments I'm like, was that God that I knew was still with me?
Yeah.
And that's like
cool.
Right now I'm still like, okay, are these things crutches or was that really true that God was with me in this moment? And that was the thing that allowed me to move forward into like the unknown.
Yeah. Yeah.
Such extreme pain where my worst fears were all realized. And I'm like, cute, cool, okay. Yeah, of course. Like, I can do this.
The dark night of the soul.
Right? But like where you're like, oh, it's so dark. And then it gets darker.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's so bad. Like,
what is happening?
Yeah. And there is life on the other side. Yeah. And it's, I don't know. Yeah.
I just think of like nature that way. And the like, in the cyclical seed, like a seed has to be buried in the dirt to actually like sprout and crack open and like new growth to happen.
Yeah.
But it's always like so easy theoretically to like we love talking about change. We love talking about growth. We love talking about like
that other people should change.
Yeah.
And then but what you really have to endure to see that like actual growth and change, like
it is hard.
Yeah, especially I think at our age too. Like when you're a little more naive.
Things have been so established for so long too. And
and you're like, oh, great, this is midlife.
Yeah.
And this is the crisis that we talked about. Yeah. Which, I mean, we shouldn't be surprised, but to actually like live it. And and I hope our generation is like, again, talking about it more. Because
for sure.
Maybe the past generation went through it, but it looked like buying the motorcycle or having the affair or leaving one's family. But there was never like that curiosity or even like the space to ask the why.
Yeah.
So this is a safe place. You're accepted. You can still exist.
Yeah.
It was just like that person's a villain or they're crazy or what are they doing, and going, no, this is humanity. This is like the human experience.
Totally.
Like this.
Yeah.
And you have to rebuild. And to just cast people out.
Totally.
Sucks. Because then they can never be authentic. They're never going to risk like, well, you call me a bad person once.
Yeah.
Why would I want to stick around for that?
Yeah. And that's the thing. You can still just kind of like trade one thing for another. You know what I mean? Like trade. Yeah. So maybe like, I don't know. It's easy to just get caught up in like repeating things in different forms.
Yeah. Which is like I think the big reason to be curious.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I will keep doing the same thing over and over.
Totally. But I think that's where love comes in. Like, I think love for me is the most representative thing of God because it's like mysterious in a way and it causes us to sacrifice or to like do things beyond ourselves for the love of someone else or for the care of someone else or I don't know. And I think that's what like filtering our lives through that and like putting boundaries does not mean you have to like I don't know like show like disrespect or hate towards someone. It can be done in a way that
it can also be like loving and respecting somebody from afar and
totally
right. You can't change. You won't change. That's okay. Like I love you for who you are. Like but me interacting with you causes me to be someone that I'm not.
Yeah.
So I need to remove myself.
Totally.
That doesn't mean that they're bad, or the thing that they're participating is necessarily bad. I can think maybe it's unhelpful, but who am I? Like, they know what's best for themselves, and God is taking them on a journey.
That's the thing you can't control. You can't.
Different than like the atheists. Again, like some days I'm like, if I ever partner with someone again, I kind of feel like, being with somebody who doesn't have a reference point for God is actually like a beautiful thing. Like, again, that's been such a great gift over the past while, is like, man, again, like inherent value and different
perspectives.
And just
is so necessary.
It helped me wrestle with like the years of like understanding the world a certain way. And
totally.
Like, wait, there's a whole other way to look at things. Let alone the other world religions out there too.
Which I think is why it's so important to expose yourself to different perspectives and experiences. Because I think when you're in that like bubble of just thinking one way, that actually also is something that can enable you to be controlled, because for me, when I started reading other people's conclusions and study on the Bible, I was like, they have come to their own conclusion. They're doing their own research. Like, there's a lot of opinions out there about the Bible. And that empowered me to be like, I can make up my own mind. Like, instead of trying to, someone has all the answers. Some one person out there has got all these answers about the Bible. Like, that's just not reality. Like, the Bible is something that is highly debated, that even scholars disagree on. Constantly.
Oh my goodness. And that's like, again, Bible for normal people. I think
so great.
Like, love that. And just like, these people are so learned. Like, academics to the nth degree. Like, what Pete Enns is
of Jared Bias. I don't actually know what I know he's like New Testament and scholar and stuff, but I think their endeavor to try and make all that stuff also as well, just like in reach of the everyday person, rather than this so like gate-kept, elitist kind of.
Right, like you need to know, like, systematic theology, like everything. Like, I know all the right answers, and they're like, well, we know all the right answers, and we're like, there's like totally this debate. Like, we don't know if this is literal. We don't know if this is figured. Like, we can have a pretty strong. I love they posted on Exodus the other day, and they were talking.
There's like the Pete ruins Exodus thing.
Something where the likelihood that didn't actually happen. Yes, the archaeological evidence is not there. And just, again, like, what do we do with that stuff as Christians? And for most of us, we don't have the time to kind of delve into that.
No. So. And I mean, traditionally, you would pay money to get that knowledge. So I love that they are making it available. And because that barrier of financial barrier also allows people to remain, knowledge is power in a way.
100%. Education, like, actually I went to church this past Sunday, and I was like, just trying to engage with it in a different way, like kind of going, okay, like what are the good aspects here? And they had a missionary preacher, and he was just talking about like education, and that empowers people. And yes, like 120%, like, it's so for good to see, like, that's how you truly love somebody, is to go like, okay, tell me about yourself. Like, how can I like help you become like the most full version of yourself?
Totally.
Without anything, like, there's no like, I'll give you this, you need to give me this. Like, you're now indebted to me. No, like, here, have this, be free. If you want boundaries from me, no problem. Like, again, this is sort of not related, but I remember some people saying that just did remind me about boundaries around, like, with my kids. Like, Christa, don't have boundaries with these certain people, because what happens if your kids need those same boundaries for you? One really difficult conversation I had on the outside of this was like, one day your kids are going to want nothing to do with you, and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, woof, okay, that is my worst fear. Okay, cool, thank you for that. But, okay, if that day comes and they are like, Mom, you are unhelpful in my life, you have caused me trauma, I need space. Yes, kids, be blessed, go find the space that you need. And hear me say that now. And if they need to have a podcast where they talk about their trauma or whatever else, like, do that. Like, whatever they need. And it has nothing to do with control or me looking bad or whatever else. Like, I get it. Happy to be the bad person. Happy if you guys need the space. But I also live in a place where I don't want that to be the case. I am accountable to them. And if they do say like, oh, I need something to be different, or this is how I truly am feeling, I hope I'm that safe place. And to say, I need this boundary, or this is my truth, or whatever else. And hopefully, I mean, we get to have a relationship forever. But if not, then make like for them to have the freedom. Me to go, I love and respect you enough that whatever you need in this moment, go and be released to go do that.
And I think that's why it's like also so important as parents to like have relationships with like friends and other people, because you just need that, like But I had one last thought on the boundary thing. Of course. Because I was kind of thinking like we often think of boundaries as like saying no or distancing, but I feel like boundaries can also be saying yes to things that like you wouldn't normally. Well, that were before like a no. Like that's how we were talking about like reforming your neural pathways. Like that does, saying yes to some things that would have before been like your world kind of was shrinking. Boundaries can also be like expanding your world again in a new way.
Concept.
In a new way where you're like, and then curiosity comes. Like just, I don't know, saying yes to the unknown, to like doing something new. And
I feel like that's been my last year, which a lot of that has been like me trying to like go through like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I think this is the way forward. And me being very like, I just didn't want, like, it was not the way I used to show up in the world. And now going like, no, I think this is the way forward. This is my way forward. And some of those things have been painful, but yet really, really good. And definitely like that expansion. And could not agree more. Yes.
For sure. Especially, I think when you've like, for me, church was quite a like, it controlled a lot of my life and thinking for a long time. So
it's like a recalibration. You
totally
like, okay, it was so far like this way that you're like, okay, I mean, again, we hope the extremes don't exist, right, where you go exactly the opposite, but to at least like kind of migrate in a different direction to totally things like, again, we talked about the naturalist. I was like, oh yeah, like that's really interesting what you have to say. And like, I don't, like, or the atheist, or like, and I did some, I think I said, well, of course I said to you that I did that, what is it called? Like the psychedelic, like, trauma, whatever stuff. And Emily wouldn't kind of say like, I'm going to do this. It was so helpful and so amazing. And again, wouldn't have been, kind of my norm before. And so good.
And then speaking of podcasts before, like what you were saying, how you like been interacting with like atheists and stuff. One of the podcasts that does that, which I love, is that Data Over Dogma.
Right.
So the two hosts, he's a Bible scholar and the other guy is an atheist, and they're
mutual respect, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They're friends, like, and like they are listening to each other's perspectives, and I love that.
There's no attack. Like, I mean, somebody we love is Brian Recker and he's like a ex-evangelical pastor that's deconstructed and just like really affirming. I don't know. He's just got many good thoughts. Guy. And Mark Driscoll got onto him the other day, and there's like this attack, and it's just so shitty because
did he like specifically attack him?
He was, or was it saying like he's a soy, like just this bad like a soy boy, and he's like, what does that even?
What does that mean?
Like, I don't drink regular milk, so I want a man
like a hipster.
Which again, like if you respected that somebody can have a different conclusion than you, then you would speak to that person differently, and that goes to the love thing, like I am going to love myself and love you in the same way. So therefore my respect looks different. I don't view you as the enemy. Like, keep the problem and keep like us like on the same level playing field. Not like no one should elevate themselves to, think they have the answers or
Or that their
that
view is
great-
better than someone else's. Yeah.
the crazy responsibility to preach the right thing, save people and all that. No.
Yeah.
We're all, again, this
Figuring things out.
line could be bad people, God could be good, whatever that needs to be. But again, the equality is so important, and the respect. And if you find that you're not engaging in that way, then boundaries. Whether more boundaries, less boundaries.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned that. Yeah.
Love our chats.
All right. Well, that's this week's episode. Yeah, a couple more to go, and then we'll wrap up season 1, and we'll tell you what's coming for season 2.
Pretty exciting. Yeah.
All right. Cheers, guys. See you next time.
Bye.